Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Setting up xdebug with PHP and Docker can significantly enhance your development experience by allowing you to debug your applications more effectively. Below is a step-by-step tutorial on how to configure xdebug with a PHP application running in Docker. Prerequisites. Before we begin, ensure you have the following installed. 1. Docker. Install Docker from Docker's official website, https://www.docker.com/get-started. 2. Docker Compose. This usually comes with Docker Desktop, but you can install it separately if needed. Step 1. Create a sample PHP application. First, let's create a simple PHP application. In your terminal, create a new directory for your project. Inside this directory, create a file named index.php. Step 2. Create a dockerfile. Next, create a dockerfile in the same directory. Step 3. Create a docker-compose.yml file. Now, let's create a docker-compose.yml file to define our services. Step 4. Configure xdebug. We need to configure xdebug to enable remote debugging. This can be done by creating a php.ini file, or you can simply add the configuration directly into the Docker file. We will add it into the Docker file for simplicity. Create a php.ini file in the same directory. Step 5. Build and run the Docker container. Now that we have everything set up, let's build and run our Docker container. This command will build the Docker image and start the container. You should see output indicating that the Apache server is running. Step 6. Configure your IDE. To debug your PHP application, you need to configure your IDE, like PHP Storm, Visual Studio Code, etc., to listen for xdebug connections. For PHP Storm, 1. Go to Preferences-Languages and Frameworks-PHP-Debug. 2. Set the debug port to 9003. 3. Enable Can Accept External Connections. 4. Set the xdebug IDE key to FStorm, or any key you prefer. 5. Start a new Listen for PHP Debug Connections session. For Visual Studio Code, 1. Install the PHP Debug extension by Felix Becker. 2. Create a launch.json in the .vscode directory with the following content. Step 7. Start debugging. 1. Access your application in the web browser by navigating to http://localhost. 2. Set a breakpoint in your IDE, for example, in index.php. 3. Refresh the page, and your IDE should hit the breakpoint, allowing you to step through the code. Conclusion. You have successfully set up xdebug with a PHP application running in Docker. Now, you can debug your PHP applications efficiently. This setup can be further enhanced by configuring additional xdebug features as needed. Troubleshooting. Ensure that your firewall allows connections on port 9003. If you're using Docker on Linux, you may need to replace host.docker.internal with your actual host IP address. Check the xdebug log file for any issues if debugging does not work as expected. This setup should give you a solid foundation for debugging PHP applications using Docker and xdebug. Happy coding!